All right, so we are going to revisit the Kenneth Arnold, the infamous Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting from 1947. We're going to revisit the case. I've done a couple videos on this already, and we're going to read in his own words what he says about it all. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we're revisiting the case and seeing what he says in his own words. So let's get right to it here. So the following story of what I observed over the Cascade Mountains, as impossible as it may seem, is positively true. I never asked nor wanted any notoriety for just accidentally being in the right spot at the right time to observe what I did. I reported something that I know any pilot would have reported. I don't think that in any way my observation was due to any sensitivity of eyesight or judgment than what is considered normal for any pilot. So on June 24th, 1947, I had finished my work for the Central Air Service at Chehalis, Washington. And at about 2 o'clock, I took off from Chehalis, Washington Airport with the intention of going to Yakima, Washington. My trip was delayed for an hour to search for a large marine transport that supposedly went down near or around the southwest side of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington, and to date has never been found. Oh. Okay. I flew directly toward Mount Rainier after reaching an altitude of about 9,500 feet, which is the approximate elevation of the high plateau from which Mount Rainier rises. I had made one sweep of this high plateau to the westward, searching all of the various ridges for this marine ship, and flew to the west down and near the ridge side of the canyon where Ashford, Washington is located. Okay. Unable to see anything that looked like the lost ship, I made a 360-degree turn to the right and above the little city of Mineral, starting again toward Mount Rainier. I climbed back up to an altitude of approximately 9,200 feet. The air was so smooth that day that it was a real pleasure flying, and as most pilots do when the air is smooth and they are flying at a high altitude, I trimmed out my airplane in the direction of Yakima, Washington, which was almost directly east of my position, and simply sat in my plane observing the sky and the terrain. Okay? All right, so there was a DC-4 to the left and to the rear of me, approximately 15 miles distance, and I should judge at 14,000 foot elevation. Oh, wow. The sky and air were crystal clear. I hadn't flown more than 2 or 3 minutes on my course when a bright flash reflected on my airplane. So a bright flash was reflecting on his airplane. It startled me as I thought I was too close to some other aircraft. I looked every place in the sky and couldn't find where the reflection had come from until I looked to the left and the north of Mount Rainier, where I observed a chain of 9 peculiar-looking aircraft flying from north to south at approximately 95-foot elevation and going seemingly in a definite direction of about 170 degrees. They were approaching Mount Rainier very rapidly, and I merely assumed they were jet planes. Anyhow, I discovered that this was where the reflection had come from, as 2 or 3 of them every few seconds would dip or change their course slightly, just enough for the sun to strike them at an angle that reflected brightly on my plane. These objects being quite far away, I was unable for a few seconds to make out their shape or their formation. Very shortly they approached Mount Rainier, and I observed their outline against the snow quite plainly. So, okay. I thought it was very peculiar that I couldn't find their tails, but assumed they were some type of jet plane. I was determined to clock their speed, as I had 2 definite points I could clock them by. Okay. The air was so clear that it was very easy to see objects and determine their approximate shape and size at almost 50 miles that day. Oh, wow. Okay. I remember distinctly that my sweep second hand on my 8-day clock, which is located on my instrument panel, read 1 minute to 3 p.m. As the first object of this formation passed the southern edge of Mount Rainier, I watched these objects with great interest, as I had never before observed airplanes flying so close to the mountaintops. Flying directly south to southeast down the hog's back of a mountain range, I would estimate their elevation could have varied 1,000 feet one way or another, up or down, but they were pretty much on the horizon to me, which would indicate that they were near the same elevation as I was. Okay. They flew like many times I have observed geese fly in a rather diagonal chain-like line, as if they were linked together. Right? They seemed to hold a definite direction, but rather swerved in and out of the high mountain peaks. Their speed at the time did not impress me particularly, because I knew that our Army and Air Forces had planes that went very fast. So what kept bothering me as I watched them flip and flash in the sun right along their path was the fact that I couldn't make out any tail on them. Interesting. And I am sure that any pilot would justify more than a second look at such a plane. I observed them quite plainly, and I estimate my distance from them, which was almost at right angles, to be between 20 to 25 miles. I knew they must be very large to observe their shape at that distance, even on as clear a day as it was that Tuesday. In fact, I compared a Zeus fastener or cowling tool I had in my pocket with them, holding it upon them and holding it up on the DC-4 that I could observe at quite a distance to my left, and they seemed smaller than the DC-4, but I should judge their span would have been as wide as the furthest engines on each side of the fuselage of the DC-4. Okay. The more I observed these objects, the more upset I became. As I am accustomed and familiar with most all objects flying, whether I am close to the ground or at higher altitudes, I observed the chain of these objects passing another high snow-covered ridge in between Mount Rainier and Mount Adams, and as the first one was passing the south crest of this ridge, the last object was entering the northern crest of the ridge. As I was flying in the direction of this particular ridge, I measured it and found it to be approximately 5 miles, so I could safely assume that the chain of these saucer-like objects was at least 5 miles long. Oh, wow. I mean, that's pretty long. I would... I could quite accurately determine their pathway due to the fact that there were several high peaks that were a little this side of them, as well as higher peaks on the other side of their pathway. Okay. As the last unit of this formation passed the southernmost high snow-covered crest of Mount Adams, I looked at my sweep secondhand, and it showed that they had traveled the distance in 1 minute and 42 seconds. Even at that time, this timing did not upset me, as I felt confident after I would land, there would be some explanation of what I saw. But would there? A number of newsmen and experts suggested that I might have been seeing reflections or even a mirage. This I know to be absolutely false, as I observed these objects not only through the glass of my airplane, but turned my airplane sideways where I could open my window and observe them with a completely unobstructed view, without sunglasses. So even though 2 minutes seems like a very short time to one on the ground, in the air, in 2 minutes' time, a pilot can observe a great many things, and anything within his sight of vision, probably as many as 50 or 60 times. And 2 minutes, even on the ground, seems like a lot to me. I mean, it doesn't seem like too much, but like enough to gauge like what you're looking at. But I guess in the air, I mean, might be better. I continued my search for the marine plane for another 15 to 20 minutes, and while searching for this marine plane, what I had just observed kept going through my mind. I became more disturbed. So after taking a last look at Teton Reservoir, I headed for Yakima. I might add that my complete observation of these objects, which I could even follow by their flashes as they passed Mount Adams, was around 2.5 or 3 minutes. Okay. So it's a little more than 2 minutes then. Although by the time they reached Mount Adams, they were out of my range of vision as far as determining shape or form. Of course, when the sun reflected from 1 or 2 or 3 of these units, they appeared to be completely round. But I am making a drawing to the best of my ability. Yeah, he made some really good drawings of these things, sketches and drawings. that are always very interesting to look at, which I am including as to the shape I observed these objects to be as they past the snow-covered ridges as well as Mount Rainier. And remember, he got a good look at these things, at the shape of these things, what they appeared to look like. So now remember, this is what started the whole flying saucer craze. The Kenneth Arnold sighting, UFO sighting. This is what started it all. This and Roswell. Both. But this is what started the flying saucer UFO craze. This right here. So that's why I like to go over this one a lot. And everything else that was going on after that. Because there was a whole bunch of sightings. All over the states. So he keeps going. When these objects were flying approximately straight and level, they were just a black thin line, and when they flipped was the only time I could get a judgment as to their size. Yeah, they're like flipping and kind of crazy. They don't sound like a plane to me. I mean, not like a man-made plane at all. These objects were holding an almost constant elevation. They did not seem to be going up or coming down, such as would be the case of rockets or artillery shells. I am convinced in my own mind that they were some type of plane or airplane, even though they didn't conform with the many aspects of the conventional type of planes that I know. Right. Although these objects have been reported by many other observers throughout the United States, there have been 6 or 7 other accounts written by some of these observers that I can truthfully say must have observed the same thing that I did. Right. Particularly the descriptions of the 3 Western airline employees, the gentleman from Oklahoma City and the locomotive engineer from Illinois, plus Captain Smith and co-pilot Stevens of United Airlines. Some descriptions could not be very accurate, taken from the ground, unless these saucer-like discs were at a great height, and there is a possibility that all of the people who observed peculiar objects could have seen the same thing I did, but it would have been very difficult from the ground to observe these for more than 4 or 5 seconds, and there is always the possibility of atmospheric moisture and dust near the ground, which could distort one's vision. I have in my possession letters from all over the United States and people who profess that these objects have been observed over other portions of the world, principally Sweden, Bermuda, and California. Wow. I would have given almost anything that day to have had a movie camera with a telephoto lens, and from now on I will never be without one. But to continue further with my story, when I landed at Yakima, Washington Airport, I described what I had seen to my very good friend, Al Baxter, who listened patiently and was very courteous, but in a joking way didn't believe me. I did not accurately measure the distance between those 2 mountains until I landed at Pendleton, Oregon, that same day, where I told a number of pilot friends of mine what I had observed, and they did not scoff or laugh, but suggested they might be guided missiles or something new. In fact, several former Army pilots informed me that they had been briefed before going into combat overseas that they might see objects of similar shape and design as I described, and assured me that I wasn't dreaming or going crazy. Okay. They were being briefed? That's kind of strange. Um, let's see here. Um, Anyhow, the news that I had observed these spread very rapidly. Yeah. And before the night was over, I was receiving telephone calls from all parts of the world. Oh. And to date, I have not received one telephone call or one letter of scoffing or disbelief. The only disbelief that I know of was what was printed in the papers. I look at this whole ordeal as not something funny or as some people have made it out to be. To me, it is mighty serious, and since I evidently did observe something that at least let's see, that at least Mr. John Doe on the street corner or Pete Andrews on the ranch has never heard about is no reason that it does not exist. Oh, okay. Um, let's see. I will go as so far as to assume that any report I gave to the United and Associated Press and over the radio on two different occasions, which apparently set the nation buzzing if our military intelligence was not aware of what I observed, they would be the very first people that I could expect as visitors. I have received a lot of requests from people who told me to make a lot of wild guesses. I have based what I have written here in this article on positive facts, and as far as guessing what it was that I observed, it is just as much of a mystery to me as it is to the rest of the world. So, there you go. That's in his own words. Pretty crazy. Yeah, it says here the modern phenomenon of UFOs and flying saucers began in Washington state on June 24th, 1947, when Kenneth Arnold spotted 9 mysterious high-speed objects flying like a saucer would along the crest of the Cascade Range near Mount Rainier. See, his report made international headlines and triggered hundreds of similar accounts of flying saucers locally and across the nation. So that's so I've done a lot of videos on this so far, and we're just getting started on this one, on the flying saucer craze that began in 1947. Just getting started with that. I've done, like I said, number of videos. Definitely not stopping on this one because this is pretty. This is I feel this is like one of the most significant UFO incidences and time periods, eras of UFO sightings. Yeah. And he's drawn sketches of these things. They weren't all of the same shape. He did say Oh, this is so crazy. Let's see. What does this say here? Oh yeah, he did say that they did not appear to like whirl or spin, but seemed in fixed position, traveling as I have been made drawing. But he did say that they would like flip and stuff too. So they seemed longer than wide. Their thickness was about 1/20th of their width. This is like in his own words here. Um, this is actually from a letter to the Air Force. Huh. Now, um, let's see. Where is that one? Let's see here. Where is that? So most of them were of a similar shape, but like, yeah, they would like flip. They would flip. He saw them in a couple different ways. He saw them when they kind of like rotated a bit, and then he saw them when they looked more flat. So, but he could like see their he yeah he could see them at the different. So I think they like flipped a little bit, but like maybe weren't like turning. He means like not spinning and whirling. Yeah. Um, and then one of the objects, here it is. He later reported that one object had a double crescent shaped rear end. Yeah. But the others were more similar to each other, except that one. But that goes to show they weren't like all the same shape. They were like metallic or whitish and shiny, right? Um, Flat or rather heel shaped, very shiny. It says color of object silver, likely silver. Mm. So they were flat and like rather heel shaped. A lot of them. Mm. Yeah. Well, yeah. I wanted to do another video on this. I mean, this continually fascinates me because of how significant it is. Um, so yeah, revisiting the Kenneth Arnold 1947 UFO sighting. Um, if you're interested in more, check out the other videos I've done on this, and I've done related videos so far on the sightings that started in 1947. There's still a lot to do. I'm trying to do the newspaper sightings, that started in 1947 too. Um, so I do have a couple videos on that. Um, and I will return to those shortly. Um, and well, hope you enjoy the video. Hope you find it interesting. Let me know any further thoughts and comments you have below. And I'll be back with more UFO videos and other strange mysteries sometime soon.